Hello, and welcome to the LIS Recap. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's begin. I'm going to explain a movie called Into the Night today. Terenzio rushes into a Brazilian airport in the opening scene. He appears to be panicking and in a hurry. Most people would assume he was late for a flight. But this couldn't be further from the truth. He asks the help desk if there are any tickets to the west. But the nearest one is 2 hours away. Nonetheless, he purchases the ticket solely for the purpose of crossing the terminal at the same airport. A well-known influencer, Inês, is video chatting with a friend in New York when she chokes and passes out. Inês is concerned, especially since she is powerless to assist her. People watching TV outside notice that the TV reporters and live show hosts have passed out in front of the camera. Not only that, but an entire street is covered in unconscious people, except for Terenzio, who knows what is going on. The rest of the viewers believe it is a joke. He declares that it is time for him to act and hurries to the terminal. When a guard is distracted, Terenzio grabs his gun and motions for everyone to move out of his way. He rushes to catch a flight to Moscow that is leaving in a few minutes. When he enters the plane and holds everyone at gunpoint, only a few passengers have boarded. The pilot is missing, and the co-pilot, Matthew, refuses to assist the terrorist. A bullet hits Matthew's palm and injures him while they fight for the gun. Outside, the passengers are terrified, and the flight attendant, Gabrielle, is attempting to keep them calm. Terenzio emerges from the cockpit and inquires if there is a pilot on board. A woman named Sylvie stands up. Despite the fact that she is only a retired helicopter pilot, Terenzio orders her and Matthew to board the plane with the rest of the passengers. Because of the bullet, the avionics are damaged, and no one on the plane can communicate with anyone outside. When the plane takes off, Sylvie and Matthew try to persuade Terenzio, but the man is adamant. He claims to be a NATO officer who knows something they do not. When pressed, he reveals that the sun's rays have become lethal. The next day, the sunrise will kill everyone, even those who stayed inside. This has already begun in eastern countries such as Japan and Korea. And if the sunrise catches up with them, planes will be the next target. Matthew and Sylvie are skeptical of him and suspect he is mentally ill. Terenzio also admits that he may appear to be an idiot, but insists that he is not. Matthew's hand is severely bleeding, which could be problematic in the long run. Laura, one of the passengers, works as a home health nurse for an elderly man suffering from dementia. Because she is the only medical professional on board, she accepts the responsibility of assisting the pilot. They don't have a sewing kit, so they use a hot knife to close the wound. Matthew screams in agony, and the passengers become even more terrified. Matthew understands that if they begin to protest, everyone's life will be jeopardized. As a result, he informs them that they will land at a different location per Terenzio's request before continuing on to their original destination. Matthew is hoping that the fighter jets will come to their rescue because they were kidnapped at gunpoint. However, Sylvie has the impression that they are on their own. A passenger named Ayaz overheard them discussing the sun and suspects the pilot of deception. Suddenly, an Arab passenger begins coughing and passes out. Ayaz pretends to assist him, stealing Terenzio's gun in the process. Ayaz orders Terenzio to be locked inside the toilet, and Matthew is asked to tell the truth. The pilot explains that they are landing in Iceland because Terenzio wanted to go west. The terrorist will be apprehended while the others will be released. He also informs them about the sun and Terenzio's belief that it will kill people. This causes a frenzy among the passengers. They begin to recall strange events that occurred prior to boarding the flight and are concerned about their family. As captain, Matthew calms everyone down and accepts the responsibility of saving them all. Later, he attempts to land at an airport in Iceland but receives no signal from traffic control. When they get a good look at the ground, they notice that several planes have collided and that people are fleeing. They finally realize Terenzio was telling the truth, but they can't land because the runway is closed, because the plane only has enough fuel to fly a short distance west to Scotland. The captain decides to do so and hope for the best. He pulls Terenzio from the toilet so he can tell everyone what's going on. He admits that he learned about the sun by listening in on his seniors' conversations. He has no idea why this is happening or when it will end. All he knows is that they must fly away from the sunrise if they are to survive. Meanwhile, the Arab man who collapsed earlier remains on the floor. He's having trouble breathing and is on the verge of passing out. He claims to have swallowed diamonds with his last breaths. Laura, the nurse, tries everything she can to save him, but her efforts are futile. Simultaneously, they make an emergency landing in Scotland, where Matthew stops the plane seconds before it collides with a wall. When they step outside, their phones begin to ring with notifications from their loved ones. The internet is awash with reports of deadly sunlight. Half the world has died, and the other half is about to die. The airport is deserted because everyone who had a chance to flee has done so, and the rest are hiding in dark places in the hope that it will protect them. However, news reports indicate that people are dying even inside the bunkers. Suddenly, 3 RAF servicemen approach them and ask for assistance. They only have 45 minutes before sunrise, so they decide to gather essential supplies and fly west. Jacob, an aircraft engineer, is among the passengers. He wants to go back to his pregnant wife and save her, but he is asked to step back for the sake of the passengers' safety. They take off again after gathering supplies and filling the plane's tank. One of the servicemen is a pilot, and he suggests they fly away from the equator to avoid being overtaken by the sun. Their next stop is Canada, where they will refuel the plane and repair the radio. After some time, the internet is restored and their phones begin to ring. They receive final messages from loved ones who have passed away in Brussels. Then a man discovers an article claiming that the cause of the disaster is the polarity of the sun. Another passenger, Horst, is a climate expert who understands what the sun's polarity means. He explains that the sun's magnetic field reverses every 11 years. But no one knows why. Little research has been conducted because it has no significant impact on the world. However, the intensity of the reversal has weakened over the last few decades. As a result, Horst believes the reversal has become much more powerful in the opposite direction. If what he claims is correct, the Earth is being bombarded with gamma rays everywhere the sun shines, which is why people are dying so quickly. They have no way of proving the theory because all of the scientists who published the article are likely dead. IAS then discovers a news report claiming that the RAF servicemen they chose are actually Afghan terrorists. They were apprehended and were being transported back to their home country at the airport. One of them gets into an argument and pushes the dementia-stricken old man out. It kills him and earns the terrorist the passenger's contempt. Sylvie informs Matthew of the news report, and the two agree to abandon the terrorists once they arrive in Canada. They land a few minutes later and have 2 hours before sunrise. Several victims of the sun are scattered throughout the city. Terrorists are told to go to the nearest shop and look for radio repair parts. They agree, but Gabrielle and Jacob insist on accompanying them. The issue is that Jacob is aware of the plan, but Gabrielle is not. As a result, when they're in the shop and Jacob locks the terrorists away in a room, Gabrielle refuses to accompany him. Jacob doesn't waste any time trying to persuade her. He eventually makes it to the airport while being pursued by terrorists, but Gabrielle is left behind in the city. Without her, the plane takes off. Terrorists pursue it and are able to shoot through a window. Fortunately for the passengers, it only causes a crack, which will not break if they maintain a constant altitude. Dominic, a terminally ill child, is also on the flight. Ayaz tries to talk to him, but his overprotective mother, Zara, tells him to leave. They suddenly receive a radio signal from someone in Hawaii. The conversation is cut short, but they assume that some survivors are still alive because they are staying inside an underwater bunker. Matthew wants to go to Hawaii as soon as possible, but Sylvie believes that going there because of an unclear message is foolish. Meanwhile, Terenzio is enraged that the captain has complete authority. He protests, and everyone agrees that from now on, they will vote to make a decision. Just as things begin to calm down, several alarms sound simultaneously, indicating an aircraft malfunction. After investigating the issues, Matthew discovers that one of the terrorists who had been following the plane earlier had attached himself to the landing gear. They will be unable to land if he remains there. As a result, Matthew decides to fly as high as possible before succumbing to the heat and lack of oxygen. However, he overlooks the cracked window. It breaks due to the pressure difference, causing chaos inside the plane. Things fly through the air as the passengers brace for impact. Matthew quickly lowers the plane's altitude, and Jacob temporarily closes the window with a wooden board. Everyone calms down, except Dominic, who is having trouble breathing because his respiratory tube has flown away. Ayaz devises a strategy and constructs a respiratory tube out of the oxygen pipe. Zara is both grateful and ashamed that she was mean to Ayaz earlier in the day. At this altitude, the captain informs everyone that Hawaii is no longer an option because they will never arrive on time. The most practical option would be to land on the Alaskan island of Attu. Furthermore, the turbulence was unable to remove the hanging terrorist. Ayaz, Jacob, and Terenzio go to the plane's undercarriage and cut a hole in the floor to get a better look at it. Terenzio points his gun into the darkness, but the criminal pulls it and nearly kills him. Fortunately, Ayaz comes to his aid and shoots the terrorist dead. He becomes their hero for a few moments before the passengers discover he was the cause of the Arab passenger's death. They buried him in Canada, where a witness saw Ayaz cut his stomach open. Ayaz admits to being a con artist who smuggled diamonds from Brussels to Moscow. The diamonds were implanted with the Arab man's consent. But he died because he did not follow the panicking instructions. After hearing the confession, some passengers argue that Ayaz should be abandoned like the terrorists. But the majority of passengers vote in favor of Ayaz. He is thus handcuffed in the avionics bay. They land in Alaska and refill the tank again before taking off. In the following scene, Horst, the climatologist, discovers something strange while flying. The fruits that they brought back from Canada tasted bland. He believes it's because the gamma rays are so powerful that they're changing the atomic structure of the food. The most troubling aspect is that it reduces the nutritional value of the food. If this continues, they will starve to death in a matter of weeks. Matthew acknowledges the danger but believes that their primary concern should be to avoid the sun. In the last few hours, he has begun to lose control of himself. Sylvie asks him to take a break, but he yells at her, which is unusual for him. The passengers decide to force him to rest by removing him from the cockpit. Despite his irritation, Matthew promises to sleep for the next few hours. After a while, they pick up another signal on the radio and hear two parties conversing. The group, however, only hears them say Stara 17. They quickly realize that the person on the phone is a cosmonaut in space. They are astounded that someone like that is still alive. But this also means he is communicating with the control room, which is on Earth. They decide to go to NATO headquarters in Brussels, where it all began, with renewed hope for survival. At this rate, they will have 4 hours after landing in Brussels before the sun rises. As a result, with Terenzio's assistance, they may be able to find some information about the secret bunker in the headquarters. Laura discovers Matthew unconscious in the toilet outside. It turned out that his hand injury had become infected, resulting in blood poisoning. This explains why he acted the way he did earlier. They must amputate the infected tissues to solve the problem. Laura says she can perform the surgery in Brussels if they can get to a hospital. Sylvie, on the other hand, could not land the plane without Matthew. The passengers beg her because she is the closest thing they have to a pilot, but she knows she can only land a helicopter. Horst convinces her that if she does not take the initiative, everyone will perish. Sylvie is then forced to watch a few videos on how to land a plane. When she has to do the work, however, she panics. Everyone braces themselves for the worst as aggressive turbulence hits. They eventually make a shaky landing, but both the plane and the passengers are unharmed. Everyone applauds Sylvie and celebrates her accomplishment in the midst of the disaster. They were quickly divided into 3 groups to complete various tasks. 2 men remained at the airport to refuel. Zara, Laura, and her team transport Matthew to the nearest hospital, while Terenzio, Ayaz, and a man named Rick traveled to NATO headquarters. They discover numerous dead bodies blocking hallways at the hospital. People appeared to have been informed about the deaths before sunrise and were attempting to save their lives. Laura instructs everyone to ignore the chaos and concentrate on saving Matthew. Zara is filling her bags with medicine for her son and the others at the same time. Meanwhile, at NATO headquarters, Terenzio takes the group to the conference room where he first learned of the disaster. They can't go through all the papers in the time they have left, so Rick decides to look through the surveillance footage while he is away. Terenzio mocks Ayaz's Turkish ancestry, and the two fight. He hit Ayaz by accident, knocking him out and causing him to bleed profusely. Rick discovers a recording of the officials discussing a bunker under a dam in Bulgaria somewhere else. They heard the address, Stara 17, on the radio a few hours ago. Terenzio approaches him before he can return to the guys and informs him that Ayaz has already left. Rick sees Ayaz's body in a pool of blood on the screen but is too terrified to say anything. Everyone boards the plane half an hour before sunrise. Matthew is not in the best of health, but he is feeling better after the surgery. Terenzio informs everyone that Ayaz drove away ahead of them, but they cannot wait for him to return. They start the engines with heavy hearts when a car suddenly stops in front of the plane and Ayaz steps out. In the following scene, Terenzio is handcuffed in the avionics bay. Sylvie warns everyone that if the Bulgaria plan fails, they won't have enough fuel or time to travel to another location. When they land, everyone must be prepared because they will only have 20 minutes to drive to the bunker's location. Ayaz has a seizure while on the toilet. It only lasts a few seconds, and he believes it is due to excessive blood loss. He does not, however, tell the others. When he returns home, he is asked what he intends to do with Terenzio. He allows the guy to accompany them to the bunker because he does not want to sentence him to death. They arrive at a Bulgarian airport and are split into 2 groups, each riding in a different vehicle. Sylvie is driving the first car and leading the way, while Ayaz is driving the second. On the way, he has another seizure, causing them to crash. The first car has already driven away, and the group will be unable to keep up in the short time remaining. Sylvie takes a right at an intersection and comes to a half-open gate. When a passenger touches it, the electricity sends him flying. Furthermore, it turns out that they must keep pressing a button in order for the gate to remain open. Terenzio offers to wait for the others while Sylvie and the others go inside to redeem themselves. Sylvie handcuffs him to the stand before leaving, so he won't betray them. It also confirms that he will be released only after the other group arrives. On the other hand, Ayaz and the group take a left at the intersection and arrive at a similar gate on the other side of the dam. They climb up and beyond the entrance using their clothes. Despite taking different exits, they all made it to the bunker's entrance in the end. Finally, the passengers are greeted by military personnel who welcome them inside and assure them that they are safe. Terenzio is alone outside, praying to God for forgiveness. As the sun rises, he faces it and requests that it do its best. He is also killed in the end. Movie ends here.